Hey art nerds! Over the past year we have reviewed loads of watercolors. We've reviewed everything from very inexpensive children's grade like Crayola and Prang and Yarka student grade to professional grade like Winsor and Newton, M. Graham's, Core. Today we're taking a look at something that doesn't yet fall into a category for me. We're taking a look at Arteza watercolors. Now I've seen these around YouTube. I've definitely seen these around Amazon. I am really excited to check these out. Last year around February, I unboxed and swatched the MozArt Komorebi Set and I fell in love. So I have high hopes for this Arteza set. If you want to see how these handle, you're just gonna have to keep watching. So I purchased this set from Amazon and it arrived a few days later. We have 24 12 milliliter tubes or 0.4 US fluid ounces. And on the back, they list the colors as well as the opacity, and it looks like the light fastness as well as the pigments included, which I really appreciate. I'm so glad I don't have to go digging that up, and I appreciate that they're very forthcoming with this information. They also have an Arteza Club where if you join you can get 20% off your next purchase, and they also have helpful tips for watercolor with this QR code here. Something else that's really exciting is that Arteza is a US company, so it's nice to see affordable art supplies offered by a US company, and they also have a guarantee that if this product does not perform properly, you can contact them at returns@arteza.com for a replacement. I should say I purchased these out of pocket on Amazon. I will have a link in the description below. These were not provided for review. They were not provided for sponsorship. This is something I wanted to do for you guys. So today we're going to do a couple of different things. We're going to go over the colors inside this box. We're going to swatch the watercolors from tube, and then we're going to put them in half pans, let them dry, and re-swatch because that is my preferred method of using watercolors, and I have no use for watercolor sets that do not reactivate. So the colors we get today in this 24 color set are titanium white, yellow pale, lemon yellow, yellow ochre, gamboge, orange yellow, scarlet red, vermilion red, burnt sienna, crimson red, rose, mauve pale, violet, phthalo blue, Prussian blue, ultramarine blue, cobalt blue, cerulean blue, light green, sap green, deep green, raw umber, burnt umber, and noir, which will be a black. So let's go ahead and begin our unboxing. Our tube watercolors come in a cardboard sleeve, and it feels like it's pretty tight in here. Like perhaps they glued it. There we go. Got it now. And this has been shrink wrapped to avoid shifting during shipping. So I'm going to take a X-Acto blade. And one of the reasons I decided to review the Arteza Tube watercolors is I've started doing resource lists for libraries and schools, and I wanted to be able to recommend affordable watercolors that perform well. And to do that means I need to get a little bit more experience with some brands that I haven't messed around with too much. And tube watercolors tend to be one of the most economical options. So inside we have our tube watercolors. Each tube says Arteza Premium 12 milliliter. Then it has the color name as well as the light fast information, the transparency information, the pigment, and then they also have a color code. Designed in USA, manufactured in the People's Republic of China. So it's nice that it's an American company, but I would like to see more of this manufactured in the US so that American citizens can have jobs. It is distributed by Arteza at 1201 Orange Street, Suite 600, Wilmington, Delaware, in the US, 19801. And you can find out more information at arteza.com. Before we start swatching, I'm going to share a little bit of information about Arteza with you guys. If you go to the site, you can get a 10% discount with SpinWin10. You can find that in my description below. They are also available on Amazon, which I have linked, as well as on their site. Arteza has a blog with art inspiration and instructional posts if you're looking for even more inspiration, even more art information. And they aim to make art supplies for artists on a budget. They sell a wide variety of art supplies. Most seem to be repackaged or rebranded from common shelves. For example, their watercolor markers use the same body as MozArt and Arttex. Their alcohol markers share the same Kuretake body, which is quite popular with bullet and chiseled nib alcohol markers. That doesn't necessarily mean their products aren't decent quality, aren't high quality. It just means they're not spending R&D developing the form of the products they're selling. They seem to sell budget line art supplies, including alcohol markers, watercolor brush pens, paper pads, canvas and panels, painting supplies, including acrylics, watercolor, and face painting supplies, crafting supplies, kids art supplies, and bundled sets. The watercolors they sell on their site are available in tubes, cakes, and half pans. The cakes look very similar to the Artist Loft cakes that were quite popular for a while. The Artist Loft cakes that I highly recommend you don't use. The tubes are available in sets of 12, 24, and 60, whereas the half pans seem to be available in sets of 12 and 36. I purchased this set from Amazon. You can pay $26.99 to get it from Arteza, or you can pay $15.99 with a $1 coupon, making it $14.99 on Amazon. Generally, the prices for Arteza products seem to be lower through Amazon than through the Arteza site. And it seems like this might be an excellent avenue for art teachers to explore, or for librarians who are creating art resource rooms to explore. So I really look forward to sharing these with you guys today. I really hope these are going to be a quality art supply that could be an option for art teachers and librarians. All right, so next we are going to start swatching, and I am going to swatch on cotton rag watercolor paper. We have 24 colors to swatch today, and I am swatching on Stonehenge Aqua Cold Press from my own collection. And I want to take a quick moment to thank my wonderful, wonderful patrons on Patreons, my dear Artnerds, because if it wasn't for their support, I would not be able to do these reviews. They do get kind of expensive. It does consume a lot of material. So thank you, Artnerds, so much for your continued support. So for those of you who are not familiar with how I swatch watercolors, we have 24 that we need to swatch. So I'm going to try to do 12 and 12. So we're going to do a gradiated wash, and then we're going to do a mass tone swatch. And I'm going to do this both for the wet and for the dried out tube watercolor. So I'm going to let this cure. I used a Sakura Pigma graphic, and I'm going to go ahead and fill the half pans I showed you guys off camera so we can be ready to get cracking. So I've got my half pans nice and filled. So that means I can put these tubes away for the time being, and I can go ahead and get started with my swatching. So I have swatched all of the wet from tube Arteza paints. I found that from the tube, they go down fairly vividly. You do get some nice sedimentation with some of the blues, with the black, Some of the browns are nice as well. This brown up here is a little bit mediocre. I'll swatch that again so you guys can kind of see what I'm talking about. It's just not necessary. It's like, and it's actually a little nicer now that it's bigger. So perhaps I misspoke a little bit. But the colors seem fairly bright and saturated. They do remind me a little bit of Reeves watercolors. It would be interesting to do kind of a head-to-head comparison with the two just to sort of see. Now, of course, we're probably going to need to do a mud test with these watercolors just to see, you know, if they turn to mud on the paper. But I think I'm going to wait until these have dried out before I do that. Just kind of doing a little wet into wet example here. Now I am painting on a cotton rag paper. Cotton rag papers tend to handle sort of watercolor techniques a little bit better than many cellulose papers. They tend to hold on to the moisture a little bit longer, so you can get nice wet into wet blending that you wouldn't otherwise be able to get if you were using a cellulose paper, because the water tends to just evaporate from the surface of cellulose papers rather than soaking in. So these may also bear testing on an inexpensive paper, because I feel like that's probably what most schools and most libraries are going to have on hand for younger artists to play with. But so far, I feel like they handle decently well. I've certainly used worse, and I'll be interested to see how these handle after they've dried out and have been reconstituted. So I'll see you guys then. All right, art nerds, so our Schminke Horadam watercolors, they see, ooh, no, they are not dry. They may take a really long time to dry. Look at this. So it's been 3 days. Some of the colors are dry, like yellow, red, blue, yellow ochre are fairly dry. And then the Schminke Payne's Gray is still really tacky. So I thought I was going to just go ahead and work on the second half of our swatching today, but I feel like I really need to let the Schminke dry out a little bit more. So I'll check in with you guys when I touch it and the Schminke Payne's Gray doesn't adhere to my finger. Okay, art nerds, so it's been a few days and my Arteza watercolors have had a chance to dry fully, and they look just about as dry as the desert. In fact, I'm gonna grab some other watercolors, some M-grams for comparison. And you see how these have, like, these have been dry. These are a little tacky because they're honey based, but they're pretty dry. They're pretty solid in their pans. You see how some of these colors are a little bit glossy. They look like they could be wet. That is probably from the honey in them. Other watercolors with similar effects might have aquazole in them or gum arabic in them. The Arteza watercolors are very matte when dry. The only ones that have any bit of a sheen to them are black and this purple here. So I'm interested to see how these will reconstitute, because they just seem dry as the desert. So I realized with our last swatching, I never actually labeled anything and I didn't do any color lifting tests. It's been a few days, so I'm going to try to lift some of these colors before we move on to the next part of our test. All right, so I went ahead and I did the lift test. I also labeled everything. So I'm gonna go ahead and walk you guys through it. We have titanium white A101, which is PW6. We have yellow pale A139, which is PY1. We have lemon yellow A102, which is PY3. We have yellow ochre, which is A113, which is PY42. We have gamboge, which is A170, which is actually two pigments, PY1 and PO13. We have orange yellow, which is A114, which is PO13. We have scarlet red, which is A106, which is PR21. We have Vermilion Red, A145, which is PR4. We have Burnt Sienna, A107, which is PR21, PBR6. We have Crimson Red, A105, which is PR21 and PR13. We have Rose, which is A115, which is PW6, PV23, PV19. So it is a triple pigment color. We have Mauve, Mauve, Mauve. I don't know. When I was visiting my mom in Louisiana, apparently mauve is not the actual factual correct way to say it. It's like mauve, but it means I hate that word then. Not because I was wrong, but I hate how it sounds. Sorry. Mauve Pale, which is A134, which is PW6, PV23. We have Violet, A125, which is PV23 as well. We have Phthalo Blue, which is A111, which is PB15. We have Prussian Blue, A116, which is PB15, PV23. Ultramarine Blue, which is A110, which is PB29. Cobalt Blue, A124, which is PW6, PB15. And I actually have a question about that, and we'll get to that in a minute. Cerulean Blue, A123, which is PW6, PG7, PB15. So it's another triple pigment color. We have Light Green, A167, which is PG7, PY3. Sap Green, A164, which is PG7, PY1. Deep Green, A158, which is PG7, PB115. I'm sorry, PB15. Raw Umber, which is A118, PBR6, PY42. Burnt Umber, A108, PY42, PBR6, and Noir, A163, which is PBK11. So we're going to talk about this color, which I have a question about first, and then we'll discuss a couple other things. So cobalt, as you guys might know, is toxic, can lead to heavy metal poisoning, and usually when sets include a cobalt, they will have a warning on it. And sets that include a cobalt hue, a color very similar to cobalt, that they've named cobalt but isn't cobalt, will say cobalt hue or cobalt blue hue. Now with ultramarine, when they call it French ultramarine, that usually implies that it comes from synthesized ultramarine. And I'm wondering if Arteza is calling this cobalt blue. Well, I mean, I've seen other brands that include actual cobalt, like cobalt red, cobalt orange, cobalt blue. Just call it cobalt blue. So my question is this cobalt? Or is this a cobalt hue? And if it's a cobalt hue, why have they not labeled it as a cobalt hue? That's important information to know. Now, it does have the Art and Creative Materials Institute certified, which usually means you are not going to get cancer from it. And there are no cancer warnings on here. So I guess what I need to do is I need to look up. I know PW is a white pigment. PB15 is a pretty common pigment as well. You'll see it in some of these other colors. I'm gonna look up and see what PB15 comes from, and I'll get right back to you guys. So there are several different PB15s. PB15 with no number after it would be phthalocyanine blue, and that would be M. Graham who manufactures that. But it could also be alpha copper phthalocyanine, epsilon copper phthalocyanine, beta copper phthalocyanine, beta copper phthalocyanine, and chlorinated copper phthalocyanine, or beta copper phthalocyanine and chlorobrominated copper phthalocyanine. So it could be any of those. Those are pretty common for PB15s that then have, I thought this was in ratio, so I've learned a new thing actually. It refers to the other like pigment chemicals that could be the pigment. So the more you know. So the other thing I wanted to discuss is we're going to count how many multi-pigment colors we have in this set. Mostly for curiosity. People generally talk about single pigment sets, single pigment colors as being, you know, a little purer, a little cleaner to mix. I haven't played too much with with sets that are nothing but single pigments. So even though I've tested lots of different watercolor sets, I can't necessarily speak to that. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 of 24 colors. So over half of these colors are 2 or more pigments, which is not surprising considering I paid around $16 for 24 colors. And thinking about it, these, when dry, kind of remind me of the Reeves paints that I've reviewed a while back. So we'll see about that. Anyway, next step is to start swatching these dry paints. So as before, we are going to be doing our swatching on Stonehenge Aqua Cold Press, which is a cotton rag watercolor paper. If you guys are interested, I will also re-swatch on the Arteza watercolor paper. I picked some up a while back. And I'm going to be doing the same kind of testing where we're going to do gradiated swatches and a mass tone swatch. So I'm just setting my paper up using the same markers I used for the previous test. I say markers, I mean pigment-based pens. Okay, so I'm going to let this dry for about 10 minutes and then we can start swatching. So my next step with these inexpensive watercolors is I'm just going to pre-activate them. They really seem very, very dry and like they need a little bit of extra care. So I'm just putting a little bit of clean water onto each half pan. Actually, it's more than a little bit. And it does sort of seem like these could maybe benefit from a little bit of, I don't know, Aquazol or gum arabic, one of the two. They're very dry. All right, I'll give that a little bit of time to soak in. All right, so I think these have had a chance to soak up some water. I'm just gonna move those over to the side. And I'm using a Raphael Soft Aqua. This is a synthetic brush. So we're gonna see how much this can pick up, how well it can reactivate. So we're starting with the gradiated wash swatch. And then we're doing a nice mass tone swatch. And last time I kind of made my swatches a little thin. So I'm gonna actually use the space I have, try to make them a little bit thicker. So I'm gonna do all 24 of these and I'll check back in with you guys. Okay, so after swatching all 24 colors after they've dried, the only one that was a little bit of a problem, well, there were two. There was this yellow here, which is lemon yellow, a 102. And the problem with this is it just kind of broke apart in the pan. I showed you guys that. The other problem child is raw umber here, where, and honestly, looking at the from tube swatches, the color was just never very impressive to begin with. So from swatching, all of these colors appear to still be vibrant. I really kind of have a problem with their burnt sienna. It's a more like a Indian red. And I know some of you guys are like, why do you even care? Because burnt sienna is a really common mixing color. And when you swap it out like this, when you add it, looks like it's got some black in it. Yeah, PR21, PBR6, I don't know. It just kind of changes how it handles as a mixing color. It also changes how it sediments out. All of these colors also appear to be somewhat opaque. I would not call any of these fully translucent. And that's going to also affect how you mix colors. It's also going to affect how you layer colors. And it's going to make your colors appear muddy. I took time to show you guys what my mixing water looked like because I have found that colors that tend to rely on optical brighteners tend to make the water muddy very quickly. So I wanted to show you guys that these are doing just that. So I'm going to let these fully dry and then I'm going to do a lift test. Okay, art nerds, these have dried for about 24 hours. I'm going to do a lift test now and then check in with you guys. We're going to see if they lift any differently, if they're any more permanent than the Arteza from Tube Swatches we did earlier. So I have everything kind of lifted and I've got everything labeled. These are our half pan swatches. I found that they were just as liable to lift as the From Tube swatches. And we have from top to bottom, from left to right, violet, phthalo blue, Prussian blue, ultramarine blue, cobalt blue, cerulean blue, light green, sap green, deep green, raw umber, burnt umber, noir, titanium white, yellow pale, lemon yellow, yellow ochre, gamboge, orange yellow, scarlet red, vermilion red, burnt sienna, crimson red, rose, and mauve pale. All right, folks, I want to thank you guys so much for joining me today for my Arteza Unbox and Swatch. If you are an art educator, if you are an art teacher, if you are supplying watercolor for a class of youngins, I say already these are going to be fine for your needs. Get them on Amazon. It's cheaper there. You get 24 colors. They're very economical. You can fill half pans if you wish, or you can put a little dot in daisy palettes and hand those out, or put a little dot on like a styrofoam plate and hand those out as well. And if you need to see a demonstration of that, just let me know. I'm happy to show you guys what I'm talking about. If you guys would like to see these demonstrated on student grade paper, on cellulose paper, let me know in the comments below. I would be happy to oblige you. I'm really looking forward to our field test so we can see how these really truly handle and whether or not these are an option for professional or more serious artists. I know Arteza also makes half pans, not From Tube half pans, just plain old half pans. If you're interested in seeing how those compare, let me know in the comments as well. And I want to thank you guys so much for hanging out with me. If you're looking for more watercolor goodness, whether it be tutorials or swatches or just information about watercolor, please check out my Watercolor Basics series here on this channel and over at natosoup.blogspot.com. I have loads of amazing watercolor resources aimed at illustrators and comic artists. I know we are a special breed, so I try to cater to my own. And if you love watercolors but are not comfortable painting watercolors, please check out my comic, 7-inch Kara. It is a beautiful watercolor comic about a little girl named Kara. And when I say little, I mean she's only 7 inches tall, who befriends a human teenager named Naomi and her pet kitten. It is a heartwarming story about friendship and family, and you can read it for free at 7inchkara.com or 7inchkara.tumblr.com. So I look forward to seeing you guys again really soon. Thank you guys for hanging out with me today. Bye, guys.